Hi, happy third week in Eastertide. The biblical stories that we read in the Sundays after Easter in worship are all immersed in physicality. First, Thomas is invited by Jesus to touch his side, feel his wounds. And then the next week, we read of Jesus joining Jesus' followers who are walking on the road to Emmaus, and they don't recognize him until they sit down and they eat together. He breaks bread with them. Then they see that it's Jesus. And then this week in Acts chapter 2, there's this description of the earliest Christian community. It says that day by day, they spent much time together. They had all things in common. It is clear that the life of faith is a life of physical presence in the community of faith, that is, the church. Can you call yourself a Christian and not be immersed in a community of faith? I think that's a legitimate question. So often you encounter people who say, yes, I'm a Christian, yes, I have faith, but they're not part of a church. I really think they have that backward. I think they'd be better off if they didn't have faith, but were immersed in a community of faith. Because it's the physical presence that is the thing. Well, now what are we to do, right? Because we're all physical distancing from one another. We cannot now, as a church, be together. And so we use Zoom or we watch worship services that are live streamed. We use these to stay connected, and they can be very helpful. But are we even a church anymore if we can't be together? Especially early on in this crisis, there were some churches who were defying the orders to practice physical distancing. Though I didn't agree with their decision to continue to meet, I think they were asking the right question. They were asking a legitimate question. Can a church be a church and not meet together physically? In emergency situations like we are experiencing now, the answer, I think, is yes, we can be. But still, I think it's a legitimate question. I know you long to once again be in the physical presence of other people in your community of faith, other people in your family and maybe your friends. We all long for that physical presence right now. We're missing it. We feel isolated. And I hope that one thing we can learn from this pandemic is just how important physical presence really is, and be even more committed to sustaining it in a world that is becoming more and more disembodied. I close today with a poem that doesn't have anything to do with physical presence. It's a poem about happiness by Billy Collins. The title of the poem is Despair. So much gloom and doubt in our poetry. Flowers wilting on the table, the self regarding itself in a watery mirror. Dead leaves cover the ground, the wind moans in the chimney, and the tendrils of the yew tree inch toward the coffin. I wonder what the ancient Chinese poets would make of all this, these shadows and empty cupboards. Today, with the sun blazing in the trees, my thoughts turn to the great 10th century celebrator of experience, Wahoo, whose delight in the smallest things could hardly be restrained, and to his joyous counterpart in the western provinces, yeehaw.